Well, my attitude regarding those who criticize me for being friends with Roy Cohn or Richard Nixon is, fuck 'em.
Roy Marcus Cohn, a lawyer, a deal maker, and a man who played by his own rules.
How do you win?
You want to know how to win? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. There's rules. Roy Cohn's 3 rules of winning.
The first rule is the simplest: attack, attack, attack.
Rule 2, admit nothing, deny everything.
Rule 3, this is the most important rule of all. No matter what happens, no matter what they say about you, no matter how beaten you are, you claim victory and never admit defeat. Never admit defeat.
For years, he operated in the shadows of American politics, creating scandals, twisting justice, and pulling strings for some of the most powerful people in the country. But who was he? What drove him to become one of the most feared and controversial figures of his time? Roy Cohn was born in 1927 into a wealthy Jewish family in the Bronx. His father, a respected judge, pushed Roy to succeed from a young age. His mother, who was known to be overly protective, always demanded he be the best. This combination of pressure and privilege shaped Roy into a highly ambitious young man. At just 20 years old, Roy graduated from Columbia Law School. He wasn't just smart, he was fiercely competitive, always ready to prove himself. It didn't take long for him to make a name of himself as an aggressive prosecutor.
When we talk expenses, now that isn't so. First of all, I have paid an astronomical amount of taxes. I guarantee you I have paid more taxes than any of the last 3 presidents of the United States added up together.
The case that made Roy Cohn famous was the trial of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg in 1951. The Rosenbergs were accused of passing nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
They didn't have any clue that he was actually giving everything that he looked at to the Soviet Union.
As a prosecutor, Roy played a major role in their conviction. In his words, what he said is, "I made sure the judge understood how serious this case was. Ethel Rosenberg's execution was necessary to send a message." Critics argue that Cohn went too far, especially in pushing for Ethel's death sentence. But for Roy, the trial wasn't just about justice. It was a stepping stone to fame and power.
Because I don't like the way this country punishes the workers, the middle class, the blue-collar people, the white-collar people, middle America. I think it's lousy.
In 1953, Roy became the chief lawyer for Senator Joseph McCarthy. Together, they led the infamous fight against suspected communists, creating fear across the nation. Careers were destroyed, families torn apart, all based on little or no evidence. Their partnership was powerful, but also controversial. Behind the scenes, rumors swirled about Roy's close relationship with David Shine, a handsome young aide. Some said Roy's personal feelings influenced his decisions, but Roy always denied it.
I went down as chief counsel for the McCarthy committee. I totally broke with my own background, with my own past. In other words, here I was, a young Jewish Democrat from New York, supposedly the most liberal, or one of the most liberal cities in the United States, going down to become chief counsel for a fellow like Joe McCarthy.
After McCarthy's downfall, Roy didn't disappear. He reinvented himself as one of New York's most powerful lawyers. He represented everyone, from mob bosses to major corporations. But his most famous client was a young real estate developer, Donald Trump. Cohn became Trump's mentor, teaching him how to fight legal battles and how to use media to his advantage.
Zero tolerance for criminal aliens. Zero.
Never admit guilt. Attack your enemies. Demand loyalty. These were the lessons Trump carried into his own career.
I had a lawyer who was a very good lawyer, tough lawyer, named Roy Cohn. He introduced me at one point to Roger Stone.
By the 1980s, Roy's career began to unravel. He was accused of tax fraud, bribery, and unethical behavior. In 1986, he was officially disbarred, ending his legal career in disgrace. In his final years, Roy faced another battle: AIDS. Though he publicly denied having the disease, it became clear he was gravely ill. Roy's refusal to admit the truth reflected the conflicts within him, a man who demanded loyalty but often lived in denial. Roy's decline didn't just damage his career, it revealed the fragility of the networks he had built. His relationships with mob bosses, corporate leaders, and politicians began to unravel. Once a man people feared and respected, he found himself increasingly isolated. As his power slipped away, so too did the loyalty of those he had mentored and supported. Even Donald Trump, his most famous protege, distanced himself when Roy's scandals became public. In interviews, Trump downplayed their connection, a move that reflected the transactional nature of their relationship.
Donald Trump is probably one of the most important names in America today. He is, as I say, the closest thing to a genius I've ever met in my life.
The public's perception of Roy Cohn shifted as his influence faded. Once seen as an untouchable force, he became a figure of infamy, a symbol of excess and corruption in the legal and the political system. Journalists and former allies began speaking out, shedding light on the tactics he had employed for decades. For many, his downfall was less a tragedy and more a long-awaited reckoning. Roy Cohn's life was filled with contradictions. He was a man who thrived on power but left destruction in his wake. To some, he was a hero. To others, he was a villain. But his story remains a reminder of how dangerous unchecked ambition can be. Roy Cohn's story is not just history, it's a warning about the price of power and the damage it can cause. The story didn't end with his death. His methods and philosophy left a lasting impact on American politics and legal systems. His use of fear, loyalty, and media manipulation created a blueprint that many have since followed, shaping the strategies of modern power brokers and politicians. The legacy of his influence is still felt today, as debates over ethics, justice, and ambition continue to echo in the public sphere. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. As we reflect on Roy Cohn's life, one thing becomes clear. His story is both a cautionary tale and a mirror of society's darker tendencies. His ambition, ruthlessness, and relentless pursuit of power reveal the fragility of moral boundaries when confronted with the allure of influence. In understanding Roy Cohn, we are forced to ask ourselves what we are willing to accept or ignore in the name of success.